Good evening. We start with the landmark case being heard at the Supreme Court as the constitutional conflict provoked by the Brexit crisis reaches the highest court in the UK. 11 Supreme Court judges have started hearing 2 appeals to determine whether the Prime Minister acted lawfully when he suspended Parliament for 5 weeks. That decision was described by one barrister today as an abuse of power. But those arguing for the Prime Minister said he was acting in a political capacity which has nothing to do with the law. Our Home Editor, Mark Easton, has this report.
But the country voted, didn't they, to leave?
Yeah.
Where does power lie in this troubled kingdom?
How can you be so stupid? He tells lie after lie after lie.
With the Brexit rift in noisy evidence outside the UK's Supreme Court today.
All rise.
Inside, the 11 most senior judges in the land sat in courtroom number 1 to consider that question and make it clear they were not there to judge the merits of Brexit.
The determination of this legal issue will not determine when and how the United Kingdom leaves the European Union.
A month after becoming PM, was Boris Johnson's request to the Queen that Parliament be suspended for 5 weeks a ruse to silence MPs opposed to a no-deal Brexit?
You can't shut up.
Scottish judges did think it stymied the House of Commons, ruling it unlawful. The High Court of England and Wales disagreed, arguing it was a matter for politicians, not judges. Representing the Remain campaigner Gina Miller against the government, Lord Panic told the justices Boris Johnson had acted unlawfully.
No Prime Minister has abused his powers in the manner which we allege in at least the last 50 years.
Without a written constitution, the relationship between the 3 pillars of UK governance is always evolving. You've got parliamentary power, of course, based over there. Then you've got the government's power, focused on 10 Downing Street, behind the walls of Whitehall. And then you have the power of the courts, ultimately resting here at the Supreme Court. And what we're seeing this week is that balance of power being tested.
The geography of Westminster reveals the triangle of power at the heart of the state. Today, Lord Panic focused on the relationship between MPs in Parliament and the government, headed by the PM in Downing Street, describing ministers as the junior partner. He also argued the courts were entitled to rule on the legality of Number 10 suspending or proroguing Parliament.
The Prime Minister's motive was to silence Parliament for that period because he sees Parliament as an obstacle.
Lord Panic quoted from this BBC interview to suggest Boris Johnson's real purpose was not a Queen's speech, but achieving Brexit by Halloween.
The best way to do that is if our friends and partners over the Channel don't think that Brexit can be somehow blocked by Parliament.
If this court finds...
This afternoon, Mr Johnson's lawyer in court had his turn to make the arguments.
The Prime Minister will take all necessary steps to comply with any declaration made by the court.
He'd come with an undertaking from Boris Johnson, but he also referred to Westminster's balance of power, suggesting the Supreme Court would be meddling in what were political matters if it ruled against the government. One judge wanted to know, if they did, might the Prime Minister seek to suspend Parliament a second time?
Can we take it then he wouldn't apply to have Parliament prorogued again?
I'm not in a position to comment on that proposition at all, my Lord.
It would be helpful to have the undertaking all given in writing, so absolutely.
Well, I'm content for that to be done, my Lord.
Judges like to have things written down, especially when feelings are running high and they're attempting to unpick the complex relationship between legitimate power and political ambition. Mark Easton, BBC News, the Supreme Court.
The Liberal Democrats' new leader, Jo Swinson, has told her party conference in Bournemouth that there is no limit to her ambition for the party. She told activists that if they won an outright majority at the next general election, she would, as Prime Minister, take steps to stop Brexit on day one. Our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, reports now from Bournemouth.
On the march, the Liberal Democrats have a new young leader, what they hope is a distinctive anti-Brexit message, and a clutch of MPs who've joined up from other parties. Jo Swinson's taking a relaxed approach to her first conference as leader, but will she take her party in the right direction? There's certainly plenty of ambition.
Today I am standing here as your candidate for Prime Minister.
This is a party passionate about staying in the EU. It's campaigned for a second referendum for years, but today there was no mention of that.
We must stop Brexit. And we are crystal clear. A Liberal Democrat majority government will revoke Article 50 on day one.
There was obvious emotion as she spoke about her father who died last year.
He encouraged me to believe that we can change things for the better. He encouraged me to challenge the way things are.
On policy, she promised a well-being budget where all government policy is measured by its impact on quality of life, an investment bank for green projects and protected spending on mental health. As for her political opponents, she didn't think much of Boris Johnson's use of language.
Big girls' blows. Girly swat. If he thinks being a woman is somehow a weakness, he's about to find out it is not.
As for the others,
Nigel Farage might be Brexit by name, but it is very clear that Jeremy Corbyn is Brexit by nature.
And she's hoping other Remain voters will agree with that.
Swinson wants voters to see the Liberal Democrats as the strongest anti-Brexit party. She thinks politics is so volatile, there's no reason why she can't be Prime Minister. Here, they love the ambitious talk, but to many, it'll sound like an unrealistic message.
So in the places the Lib Dems want to win back at an election, is their strategy hitting the right note? Mid-Dorset is Conservative and voted Leave. Among these choir members in Wimborne, Brexit's as divisive as everywhere else. Remain voter Leah needs to be persuaded.
I'm in two minds about the Lib Dems and what they actually want. I mean, I know they tend to say things just for the votes and actually not necessarily follow through on it.
Husband Steve backed Brexit.
I feel that, we should leave because that's what we decided in the referendum and we shouldn't revoke Article 50.
Across the road, businesswoman Linda is likely to abandon the Conservatives because of Brexit.
I feel the only party that really does have a very clear picture is the Liberal Democrats, and I believe that as things stand today, that's what I would be doing, voting Liberal Democrat.
If an election comes soon, Brexit will dominate, and success for the Lib Dems will depend on traditional party allegiances shifting. Vicky Young, BBC News, Dorset.